So we've talked about great content. We've talked about building creative, thinking out of the box, and finding the right person for that particular creative, that matching that goes on, and the science of finding the right person for the creative. Now let's look at how it gets bought. So if you look at the standard unit that an agency is allowed to charge its clients for, set by the IAB and the MRC, it says you can charge for a video ad as long as someone has seen 2 seconds of it, with half the ad in view, with the sound off. That's the standard. We think that's just plain wrong, because that is not an engaged view. And let's test it a little bit. So here's an ad, or here's an article in GH. All right, there's the ad. Okay, that was it. That was 2 seconds with the sound off, with half the ad in view. I hope you caught it. Now, the question is, what car is that? How many people? Dodge, okay. Any other guesses? What car is that? What do you think? Hands up if you think it's an American car. American car? Okay, how many think it's a Japanese car? Japanese car? Just give your best guess. I mean, you're paying for this. You just paid. You produced this nice 30-second video. You just paid to place that. How many think it's European car? Okay, European car. How many think it's none of the above? All right, let's take a look and see what car it is. Turns out it's a vacuum cleaner. So that's the Shark vacuum, if you play the rest of the ad, you see it picking up coffee beans and other things. So the contrast between the video that you create, the story you want to tell, and what you're paying for, if you're paying for 2 second, half the pixels in the view, sound off, it just makes no sense. So when you get into the ethics of video advertising, we start with this. What are you really paying for, and what are you really getting, versus what do you really want? And if you talk to a CMO about what they want from video, they'll say really one thing. I want people to engage. I want them to engage in the story I'm telling. Now, I may want them to engage because they haven't discovered my brand yet, and I'm trying to drive interest, top of funnel. I may want them to engage because they've heard of my brand, but they don't have any interest in it. I want them to get interest. I may want them to move from interest to emotional connection and tell a story like Vistaprint did about father-son passing on the bakery. I may want them to move from emotional connection to brand preference or purchase intent. I may want them to buy. I may want them to move from a buyer to an advocate or a loyalist. All these are possible with video, but it starts with you have to be paying for, and your unit has to be about engagement and not simply this 2 second sound off view of the vacuum cleaner car. Another example here. All right, get ready, here we go. All right, you just paid. So what did we just advertise for? MailChimp, okay. What else? Any other guesses? Throw out some brand names. Whose brand did we just pay for a placement on? Any guesses? Geico? Finance, okay. Not bad. It's Fidelity. So that's an ad that's trying to draw you in to investing against your retirement. Do you think they got their money's worth on that placement? So question what you're really buying. And if you're really advocates for your brands, you want to be telling the story of engaged viewers, engaging because they're interested, seeing it in places where they want to see it, and engaging in conversation with the brand where you learn things about them. And when we say that video advertising is in inning 2 of a 9-inning ball game, this is the kind of thing we mean. When people are paying for ads to scroll by in a feed, or run for 2 seconds before they hit the skip button, or run like that, you're not getting your money's worth on video. That's the Fidelity ad. So if you run the whole ad, it's actually terrific. This is a 95-year-old woman who spent a lot of her later years saving enough money that she could go skydiving. So it's a fantastic story. And if you find the right ways to find people who are going to engage in it, and the context where they're engaged and they watch it, it just builds this emotional relationship, and you feel good about Fidelity. Very different than what you saw with the 2 second view. All right, so let's talk about that question. Is the model broken? And if indeed it's broken, what metric do you use to prove that something was actually viewed and that a person actually was interested in it?
So I want to play the devil's advocate with the examples that you've shown. I would say that the model is a one-size-fits-all solution, despite the fact that there's a multitude of situations that we need to solve for. So right now we have a model it's a race to the cheapest cost per view, and that's frequently not a business goal. When it's the business goal, it works great. When it's all the other scenarios, it doesn't work. So I want to maybe share a alternate counterpoint to these examples. So you're in a room filled with people. Probably you're going to run into someone who you haven't seen in a while, right? And you're going to say, wait a second, were they recently in Costa Rica or the Bahamas? You know, it's not that I was stalking you or, you know, I spent 30 seconds on each of the videos in your Instagram feed, but in passing, as I'm rapidly scrolling on my phone through a social feed, maybe I happen to notice you in a bathing suit and I paused for half a second. It's just long enough to have that impression impress in your brain. And it's more of a discovery mechanism. So if I'm a brand and I'm trying to, blanket an area with a new product, maybe you scrolled past it, you see a flash, and after 10 exposures, you're like, wait a second, is there a new cupcake shop in Boston? You've discovered that you didn't know before. But if you're Fidelity and you have, your goal is to get someone to, move their entire, savings account into a new account, I mean, that's a big decision. 2-second view is not going to drive that. So I just think there's very different marketing goals, and we've become highly specialized, and we have highly specialized ad units and a multitude of partners, and you really have to look for the can openers and not the Swiss Army knives.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, and I think the other consideration to this being a broken model is that the path to purchase now is so short. It can be really complicated if you're talking about $100,000 of an account that you're trying to move over. If you're talking about a product or, I was just on Facebook the other day and I ended up buying a pair of shoes. I'm like, I can't believe I just bought a pair of shoes from an ad. Like that, what? I know I do this, but like, do people really do that? And they do. And that's the thing, like when you don't, when you are measuring just on views or awareness, you're missing an opportunity to bring someone along who are interested, and not all people will be, but if you don't have connectivity to that place where they can take action and do something based on what they're excited about, that's almost worse than having a lost impression.
So because I'm not a traditional digital advertiser, I would say we come at it from a little different place. We're not representing clients. We're not where they're spending $500,000 on a digital campaign with us. We're not their ad agency of record. So for us, we may have smaller budgets to work with, anywhere from 50 to 100,000, and that's where the model is broken. Like, I'm not going to tell my client that they should spend $100,000 on what you just showed. If one of their other agency partners wants to tell them, and that comes out of a separate budget, then by all means, go ahead. But when we're looking at it from an engagement place, things like Moat and all of the partners that I know the ViralGains work with, as well as many other partners, the viewability is very important, as well as the engagement. It goes back to what are they doing with the content? How long did they view it? When we can show stats that 60% of people completed a 7-minute video, that's huge. They don't ever even think, I think clients don't even think that's possible because they're so used to being driven to, you got to create a 15, you got to create a 30. Nobody wants to watch anything beyond 30 seconds. And they do. People do. If they are in the right place at the right time, they will watch it. And you've served to the right people, you will get those engagements.
Yeah, just one more thing. I think impressions will probably always be an important part of what we're measured against for things like awareness and consideration. But we're talking a lot now about quality impressions, and you have a 2-second impression that is low quality. You have a 7-minute completion rate, and that's high quality. And how do we create more of those quality impressions, knowing that we still want to reach as many people are going to be interested in this thing, but not in a way that's disruptive or in a way that takes away from the experience that they're there to do. And I think that's the biggest part of this model. It's based on knowing that people aren't here to watch that. So we're going to find the minimum requirement to create efficacy for this. But people aren't here to watch those spots. They're here to consume information and kill time or what have you. So once we can start thinking about quality impressions, then you think about context, you think about placement, you think about the storyline a little bit differently, because it isn't just about getting the logo out in the first 2 seconds of a piece of video.
And I think the IAB has defined the floor, right? So race to the bottom, you're on the floor.
Right.
And I think you guys are raising the bar, but someone had to define where the floor is.
Yeah, I would say, for our video campaigns, we don't even report impressions. We're taking it one step further. So we had a campaign that we did last fall. We worked with a partner agency that sole focus was retargeting. We talked to them about the technology where we can tag all of the people who are watching our videos, pull that audience into Facebook, create custom audiences, and then they can retarget on that audience. From there, our goal orders, if you will, was like 150 completed orders. We delivered 167 orders from that mechanism alone, and we didn't report any impressions. So it was, if we just look at, did we drive the business forward? Absolutely, we hit the goal. And the client, I think some clients in our industry specifically in public relations, they are bonused on how many impressions they delivered from an earned media perspective on the year. So as we're trying to get them away from that and focus on how many orders were completed, they're starting to change the tune. But I also understand that our business is a little bit different than what these guys are doing, and we can come at it and say this is PR, not something else.
Well, you guys have raised a couple of interesting points I want to follow up on. First of all, you've talked about the storytelling aspect of video and how video ads really have to compete with every other kind of content that's out there and be that good in order for people to want to watch them. You've also talked about the different objectives a particular brand might have, that there'll always be a place for cheap impressions if what you're looking for is cheap impressions. But there's another kind of storytelling where you're measuring engagement and how deeply someone has engaged. We've talked about Moat with this as well, because Moat is a partner of ours. Well, the question is, what do you think is the right measure of engagement? What are the things that should go into that? Is it how long they watched? Is it what percentage they watched? How many seconds? Is it what they did? A share? Giving you information? How do you create that formula that measures engagement in a genuine way?
That is a very difficult question to answer, and here's why. If everyone in here who is a professional marketer were to define engagement, you're not going to get the same answer. My team, I know, we've been trumpeting saying engagement is dead. Long live engagement. Now the currency is attention. We don't mean that someone paying attention and feeling something is dead. We mean the marketing buzzword engagement, which means likes, comments, shares, video views. It's sort of
old school view of it, right?
Correct. Like that's what engagement means in our world. But the actual, human state of engagement is obviously still the goal, but it's not good enough to say, oh, I got 1 million likes.
Right.
If your goal is getting someone to pay attention, you want to measure attention. But I think, again, context and the placement matter. So if I'm scrolling a social feed, paying attention for 3 seconds is a long time. If I'm reading an article for, a 20 tab article on the New York Times, I might have just spent 20 minutes reading it.
Right.
Now spending a minute on a video is a long time. So it's really hard to, again, have a one-size-fits-all solution.
Yeah. You mentioned goals, and I think matching the goals of the brand and the business to the goals of the consumer is a bit of an art and science, and journey work is something that's so critical to identifying measuring success, because if you're measuring success against a funnel, we all know that people don't experience their world or messages from brands even in a funnel perspective. We have to think about really empathizing with that user. What do they need? What are they interested in? And if I can start to give them things that solve those needs, be helpful, be human, be handy, I think was Forrester's post-digital mantra. Now we can start to say, okay, there's activities I'm going to do. There's stories I want to create that solve a purpose at each stage. They're going to be in a certain environment, and I'm going to measure them based on did I change a behavior at that point in time with that user. And it forces us to be very, very focused and in love with our consumers, so that we can give them things that they will appreciate.